Hello everyone. Today we're going to be doing a tutorial on how to swap the LCD panel of an HP Pavilion dv7 series. First of all, you always want to have a clean work area whenever you're working on computers. It's always best to do that so you don't lose any tools or screws while you're working on it. For this, we're going to need a Phillips 1 screwdriver, a sharp implement such as a very small flathead or a knife. I'm using some tweezers to help me get some of the small plugs undone. And then after you're done, you want a microfiber cloth so you can clean all the fingerprints off and make it look very nice. First, on this laptop, what you need to do is you need to look down in the bottom left and right corners of the screen. You'll see little rubber pads there. Underneath the rubber pads are two screws. So you'll use your sharp implement and very carefully pry up the rubber, being careful not to scratch the plastic that is around it. After that, you'll go ahead and use your Phillips screwdriver. It's always best to have a very thin shank screwdriver, so then, especially with these screws because they're right up against the bottom of the laptop, if they're slightly magnetized, it makes things easier, so you don't have to try to dig the screws out. With this laptop in general, there's only two screws that hold the front plastic in. The rest is all held in by clips and adhesive around the edge. Usually what you want to do is you want to start on the sides. They're usually the easiest to unclip. Just very carefully rock it back and forth until the tabs unclip themselves. You don't want to pry too much on it or else you will crack the plastic. Along the top there's an adhesive bar right here. You just want to be really careful whenever you're pulling those up. I find it helps to rock the plastic back and forth to kind of get the clips unhooked. If you get stuck on one side, then just move to the other, and you'll eventually work your way around. With the bottom, I try to run my finger along the edge. It'll help unclip some of the stubborn clips. And with this one, it unhinges at the bottom. This piece comes up with the bezel. Go ahead and take this and set it off to the side. Okay, after we get the screen off, then you'll basically see some of the components. You have the webcam up here. We're going to want to unplug the webcam. You can do this by using your implement or just very carefully pulling on the plug. It's not very hard. You'll see down here is your inverter. We're going to be reusing this with the new LCD. Here is your inverter plug. You can use your tweezers or just your fingers to unplug it. Okay. On this screen, there's 8 screws you need to take out. There's 2 at the top and then 3 at the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and take these 3 out. All the screws along the bottom are the same, so you don't have to worry about keeping them separate for the holes. Whenever you take off the top screws, be careful. The back panel may fall away from the LCD since it's no longer being held in place. The top screws are also the same as the bottom, so you can just put them in your same pile. Okay. As you can see, the top is starting to fall away. If you want, you can lower it down to unhook it from the bottom, let it fall away. Looking at the back of the screen now, then we see we have your LCD cable right here, along with your webcam cable. These are taped down, so you need to carefully pry them up. Pull the tape up. The LCD cable is held in by a very tough piece of tape. So you'll basically stick your fingernail or your sharp implement under there and very carefully pry up the corner of the tape. Once you get a little bit up, then you should be able to pull the rest with your fingernails or your fingers. Okay. You want to pull it away, but leave it on the connector since we're going to be re-sticking it whenever we put the new LCD on. There's some more tape down here. We'll just set that aside. Okay. Now on the sides of the LCD, there will be 4 screws on each side that hold the actual panel in place. So we'll go ahead and take these out. Again, a magnetized screwdriver will help a lot in these instances, so you won't lose the tiny screws in carpet. Leave one screw partially in on one side so you can get most of the screws out on the other. Whenever you take the last screws on the side, then support the screen, since once you take the last screw out, it is completely loose. You don't want to fall over and damage any other part of the computer. Okay. Go ahead and take the bad LCD out. We can unwrap our new LCD. Okay. First thing you want to do is you want to compare the screens. You want to make sure that the LCD connector is in the same location on both. Same location on both. You want to make sure that both have the CCFL connector. Some laptop screens have LED backlit screens. Some have the CCFL backlit screens. So you have to make sure you get the same one, or else obviously the screen won't light up. Installation is the reverse of taking it out. The screens come with a protective plastic cover, so you want to take those off. Whenever you're working on the back of the new screen, you want to be extremely careful about this board up here. You don't want to put any stress on the board because this ribbon cable that connects the LCD is very fragile. Now you put the screen in. Just be careful and install one screw on one side, so then you can have it held up a little bit. Once you have the 2 screws in, then it gets a lot easier. Don't fully tighten down the screws as you're putting them in. So then in case one of the holes doesn't line up perfectly, then you can adjust the screen and get all of the screws in perfectly. Also, don't over tighten the screws. They're very fine threads, so it's pretty easy to over tighten and strip the threads out. After you get them all in, then just do a final light tightening. Again, you don't need them too tight. Okay, now we got those in. We're going to need to move the screen down. Whenever you're moving the screen, you want to be very careful of the hinges, because the hinges are are hard to turn, and you don't want to bend the metal, the side metal, because they're extremely thin. I'm going to go ahead and move this back up and plug your LCD cable back in, your connector. Be very careful with the connection. If you damage it, then the LCD won't work. Once you get it in all the way, then push the tape down again. Okay. You're going to move the top panel back over. If you won't be able to put it back on if it's down like this, because the bottom plastic. The only way you can put that top panel back on is if the screen is almost flat. Under here, make sure that your CCFL connection goes underneath and doesn't get trapped in between the back of the LCD and the top cover, as well as your webcam connection right up here. Once you get it in there, you can slowly rotate the screen, making sure that your plastic gets stuck under the hinges right there. Now we'll just start putting in the 8 screws around. I usually put in the top ones first so that we can hold the top panel in place. Again, don't forget about your webcam connection. Don't forget about the webcam connection. On the holes, then a lot of times they have little foil connections covering the holes up. You want to make sure that those aren't blocking the holes, so that whenever you go to put the screws in, then you can get them in. Whenever you're putting these in, you can see little arrows next to the screws that have to hold. Yeah, make sure you remember to leave one blank, because this is for that silver screw that holds their LCD bezel in place. Again, after you get all of them in, give them a final tightening. Not too tight, but tight enough to where the hinge is nice and secure. Okay. You're going to want to plug in your webcam connection. If you need help getting it in, then you can use your implement to push it in very gently. And don't pull it back out. Whenever you get down to your CCFL connection, it'll only go into the inverter one way. So I'll go ahead and see if I can put it in backwards. If I try to put it in that way, it's not going to go in all the way. So you just take it out, flip it over, and put it back in. And it snaps in place. If you want, you can do a twice over. Make sure all your connections are plugged in. You have your CCFL connection, your webcam connection, the inverter connection, and then this connection is for the light that lights up the HP symbol that's on the lid. You just make sure everything isn't being blocked by any clips, so that whenever you go to put the bezel back on, then you don't snag them on anything. When you go to put the bezel back on, you want to line it up at the bottom first. Make sure the screw holes are lined up there, and then basically you'll just snap it in. You can get a couple snaps in place, and you just work your way around the edge, carefully pressing and getting them all snapped in place. Along the bottom, there's between the two plastic pieces right here and the one underneath it. Just want to kind of push down and run your hand along it, and you'll hear all the snaps snap in place. Do the same thing with all the snaps that are behind this. Just run your thumb along it gently. Don't push too hard, or else you'll crack the new LCD. Once you get all the snaps in, you'll go ahead and put your screws back in here. Want to get your rubber pieces, cover them back up. I had to use my flathead to kind of maneuver them in place, since they're in a little inconvenient place. Press down on it to make sure the adhesive holds. Okay, do it once more over. Make sure that all your clips are in along the top edge. You shouldn't see any gaps along the front bezel and the top cover. Make sure all that your bottom ones are in. If you want, you can reach behind and push them together from both sides, just to make sure that they are all in place. Last thing you do, turn the laptop on and make sure the screen is in working order. And as you can see, the screen is now working, and you can take your microfiber cloth if you have one, clean all your fingerprints off of the bezel and the LCD screen, and you're all finished. Thank you for watching this tutorial on how to swap the LCD panel on an HP Pavilion dv7 series.